It's a sprint now. Just 2 weeks away from National Signing Day. Are the Miami Hurricanes going to pull off some big flips and big additions to what's already a top 5 class?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Alex Donno, your host, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and second listen today. I'm on the Mario Cristobal sleep schedule. I'm on team no sleep until National Signing Day. And I think I could say the same for our guest today, Brad Tejeda, CanesInsight.com. It's been way too long since Brad and I have connected, so first time in a long time, Brad. And let me ask you this right off the top, because we've been getting some of these cryptic tweets. Dennis Smith put something out last night. Is this going to be one of those big recruiting weeks, or are we going to have to wait till closer to National Signing Day?
First and foremost, Alex, man, thank you for letting me come on and talk some Canes football and recruiting. It's been a minute, like you said, man. It's always great to link up with you and talk some Canes football. But yeah, man, it's that time of the year, right? Not because it's Christmas time, not because family getting together, but this is where you put the Christmas presents under the Christmas tree, right? And unfortunately, as we know, with Christmas time, there's a Grinch somewhere, right? This time of the year, the Grinch is Mario Cristobal, Alex Donno. As we know, with recruiting, timing is everything. Relationships and timing is everything. And when you get to early signing day, December 20th, timing has to be perfect. And what you're seeing right now, these next 2 weeks, it's going to shake up very good for the University of Miami. And I'm excited. We got a lot to talk about.
Merry FLIPMAS is what we've been saying for the past few days, because a lot of the targets that we're going to talk about are players who are verbally committed to other schools that Miami's looking to flip. And just so people know, we are also going to be talking transfer portal on this episode, recruiting and transfer portal here with our guest, Brad Tejeda. But Brad, let's start with CJ Bailey, the quarterback at Chaminade. There's been a lot of smoke in recent weeks. I guess my only concern would be, did Miami start showing him love too late, where NC State has been showing him love for a lot longer? He's been committed to NC State since last March, but he's a South Florida kid. He's got multiple friends and teammates at Chaminade who are already committed to Miami. And I like him a lot as a quarterback. I love his size and mobility at 6'7", runs about a 4.7, 4.8, 40-yard dash, and he's really elusive. What are you hearing on the CJ Bailey front?
Yeah, with Cedric CJ Bailey, obviously, like you said, his long teammates, Jeremiah Smith, JoJo Trader, Saquon Patterson, the list goes on. We have a lot of those guys committed. He is currently committed to NC State Wolfpack. But again, like I just mentioned, timing is everything. And as we know with timing, these last 3-4 weeks, we've had our own issues with quarterback, right? Is our starting quarterback and Tyler Van Dyke going to be here for the future? We have already found out that answer, that he is now in the transfer portal. Backup quarterback in Emory Williams, who was hurt a few weeks ago, he won't be ready till spring ball, right? Now your third quarterback in Jakari Brown, is he staying? Is he leaving? Is he playing the bowl game? We have some of those questions answered. Now you are getting into a very close proximity when it comes to timing of the last 14 days, right? You not only need to nail down your QB1 from the transfer portal, but you also need to look at your QB2 or 3 possible. And I think that is where CJ Bailey comes in. I think timing with this, it has been awesome. I think the staff has done everything that they're supposed to do when it comes to recruiting CJ Bailey. From everything I've been told, they had a recent in-home visit within the last 4 or 5 days, and it couldn't have gotten any better than that.
Awesome.
When you talk to Emory Williams, he's very open to not only a veteran quarterback coming into the room and leading the way, but he's also open to just competition in general, whether that's Jakari Brown coming back after the bowl game, or if that's dipping into the recruiting cycle again and adding that second quarterback, which I believe could be CJ Bailey. If you want to land and lock in the number one recruit in the nation in Jeremiah Smith, what better way to do it than to have his sidekick and CJ Bailey knocking on the front door, December 19th. So that's going to be an interesting one to look at. If I had to guess, I would say CJ Bailey is your quarterback 2 in this recruiting class.
I like it. Now, you mentioned a couple times the name Jeremiah Smith, top recruit in the class. He's been committed to Ohio State. Florida State has really, really been trying to flip him. I know Miami has been diligent in trying to do the same. Obviously, another Chaminade player, another local. Anything new on the Jeremiah Smith front? Because even though, listen, he's been quote unquote locked in with Ohio State for a long time, but he's kept his recruitment very open.
Yeah, I think with Jeremiah Smith, I think, Mario and the staff, they kind of knew from day one what type of recruit this young man is going to be. He's going to get everything thrown at him from every college in the United States. And there's really nothing you're going to be able to pitch or sell this young man that is going to be something different that he hasn't heard from someone else, right? I think at the end of the day, it's all about feeling comfortable, being honest and upfront, and just letting the young man decide where he needs to go. I think this is one of those things where the more pressure you put on the young man, the more he may back off of things. You look at another particular situation over at Florida State and KJ Bolden. It seems like the more time gets closer to early signing day, between fans, between other fan bases, the rumors that are going out there, it seems like KJ Bolden situation is starting to teeter a little bit with Auburn. So that's one to watch. But when it comes to Jeremiah Smith, I think, Mario and the staff has done everything right. It definitely helps with Ohio State having their own issues right now, whether it's NIL problems or just a lot of guys jumping ship and hitting the portal right now. You really don't know what's going to happen to Coach Ryan Day in the future in the next year or two. And also, Coach Hartline, a lot of people give him praise for his recruiting, but it looks like a lot of the guys that he's been recruiting the last two cycles are in the portal currently, and they don't have much stats. So that goes to show you maybe he's not much of a developer as people think. And I look at my guy KB sitting there on the seat looking at his phone, and I could only imagine Jeremiah Smith is texting him something nice. And I would expect this to go down to the distance. And my gut and my heart is telling me UM, man. I think we land them. I think it's going to be between Ohio State and Miami. I think Florida State's out. Florida's definitely out. It's going to come down to where he wants to be, where he feels more at home, man. And we'll see what happens. But I like where we sit.
You mentioned things going on at Florida State. Obviously, transfer portal's been crazy for them. Patrick Payton entering the portal. We look at a lot of their recruiting situations as well. You talked about KJ Bolden. Something that's had Miami Hurricanes fans on high alert for the past couple weeks is the possibility of actually flipping Armondo Blount back. He flipped to Florida State. There's a lot of chatter, and we know Cristobal is still in contact. I was just looking at a photo today shared by our guy Chalupa Batman on social media of Cristobal and Jason Taylor at an in-home visit with Armondo Blount. So Miami is still working on that one. And I feel, even before I saw that photo, Brad, I've been starting to feel more optimistic by the day about Armondo Blount. What do you think is going on there?
Well, anyone that knows Mario Cristobal, it doesn't matter if you commit to another program until they sign that dotted line. He's going to continue to recruit you. We saw that recently with five-star Justin Scott, who committed to Ohio State. We were able to flip him recently coming back to Miami. And, me and a few others have said this for quite a while now on the timeline. Mario Cristobal and this staff is aiming to land the best defensive line class of all time. Yeah. You got Elias Rudolph, you got Marquise Lightfoot, you got Artavius Jones, you flip Justin Scott. Man, if you're able to flip Armondo Blount back to Miami, that's another guy in the fold. And not to mention, there's a few other names at the defensive line position that Miami is still cracking down on. And I think you may see more than just one flip.
Yeah, and one of those names I want to talk about when we come back here with Brad Tejeda. We're going to be talking more recruiting and transfer portal and tracking Miami's roster. I want to talk about Dylan Stewart, the five-star edge rusher who's been committed to South Carolina. There's been a lot of smoke for a possible Miami flip there. So you know what you want to do, my friends? We're only getting started here. Second episode of the day, man. Hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. You want to keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. Guys, listen, I know we talk about sports as an escape from reality, but, we can also talk for a second here about preparing for real life. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. This is scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if my wife or my son got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from the life-saving medication they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could really happen to any of us, guys. Visit jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com and complete your physician encounter. It's going to be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com and use our offer code Locked On. That's all one word, Locked On, to get $20 off your order. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first and second listen today. Guys, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. The Locked On Network has literally launched the first ever 24/7 streaming sports YouTube channel. Locked On Sports Today, covering all the big stories, including all this college football playoff madness and Florida State complaining, all that stuff, NFL. It's all being covered at Locked On Sports Today. So you want to make sure to check that out. We are joined here by Brad Tejeda. We love talking recruiting and transfer portal with Brad. All right, so Brad, a lot of people have been kind of whispering in my ear over the last week or so to keep an eye out on Dylan Stewart. Miami was recruiting this 5-star edge rusher heavily before he committed to South Carolina. It's obviously been tough times up there in South Carolina with their football program recently. What do you think about the possibility of Mario Cristobal getting out the spatula and flipping Dylan Stewart?
I will say this. Recently, over the last month, the name Dylan Stewart has kind of, flew under a lot of people's radar, especially if you don't follow recruiting, right? And the name that kind of came up a lot was Ellis Robinson. If you want to talk about 5 stars, we were kind of in the midst of feeling, someone like Ellis may flip from Georgia to Miami. But the closer we get to early signing day, the less likely I personally feel at that. But also, the closer we get to signing day, the more I personally feel like getting that spatula out and flipping a South Carolina commit of Dylan Stewart seems very probable. Shout out to Coach Joe Salavea, who was a key contributor in flipping Justin Scott in the last couple of weeks. I think this is going to be the time where Jason Taylor gets some flowers and love as well. And you may see Dylan Stewart flip to the University of Miami. And if he does, I think Jason Taylor deserves a lot of credit for that.
I agree. And so we talked about Stewart. We talked about Armondo Blount. Are there any other defensive tackle possibilities? I know one of the names you and I discussed off the air who was not on my radar is 6'3", 330-pound Denos White.
Yes. As you see with our roster, right, we have a lot of guys that could be possibly leaving, and when you look at that defensive line front, some guys are hitting the transfer portal. Some guys are leaving for the draft, and other guys like a Nigel Lee Kelly will be coming off surgery. So he may not be ready for fall, will be ready for spring camp, but you want as many bodies in there as possible. And with us Miami fans, we've been looking for those 3 technique defensive linemen that could just get their hand in the dirt and plug the holes, right? And I think Denos fits that perfectly. This is a young man that's from Concord, North Carolina. Like you mentioned, he's hitting that 330 range. Florida State's been heavily involved with him as well, along with some other ACC programs. Mario and staff went in on an in-home visit with him recently as well, and things seem to be trending in the right direction. He's one of those guys, it's kind of a wait-and-see game. I know there's some other guys that they're going after, whether it's transfer portal or just waiting for some of these big fish at the recruiting cycle to make their decision. But I think, again, when it comes to recruiting and Mario does his due diligence very well. He doesn't put anybody on the back burner, so he's going to continue to recruit that as best as he can until it gets down to the distance. Any other names I could really think of off the top of my head when it comes to recruiting class? Xavier Mency from Daytona, yes. Obviously. That's the cornerback whose teammates with LJ McCray committed to Florida. I would expect Xavier Mency, if there is a team to watch for, it's probably Miami at the top of the list. We seem to be in a good spot for him. And then Jordan Lyle, the running back that is currently committed to Ohio State. It seems like Miami and Mario is doing everything they can to flip pretty much any commit that has any relationship with Miami, and Jordan Lyle's at the top of the list. When you look at our running back room, right, we got Don Chaney just hit the transfer portal. Henry Parrish is sending out cryptic tweets. You don't know if he's staying. He may hit the portal again. You got Trevante Citizen, who's got back-to-back knee injuries, who hasn't played any football yet. So that's 3 guys that you're either missing completely or you don't know what you're going to get out of them yet. So you're really depending on a lot of young guys, whether it's Mark Fletcher, Chris Johnson Jr., and others. So I think you need to bring in as many bodies as you can. I think Jordan Lyle brings something to the table that the other two running backs currently committed don't bring. But I do like all three running backs, and I wouldn't be surprised if we do land all three in this class.
I like it. Let me give people, before we go headfirst into transfer portal, let me give you guys the roster tracker so far. Here are the players from Miami who have already entered the portal. Jafari Harvey, Don Chaney, who Brad just mentioned, Corey Flagg, Tyler Van Dyke, of course, Frank Ladson, defensive end Chance Williams, and the most recent player to enter the portal. I'm going to miss him. It's not too surprising because he barely played this year, but tight end Jaleel Skinner. I like Jaleel, and I wish him the best. I hope he can go blossom somewhere else. And, for players who are leaving for the NFL, James Williams and Leonard Taylor have officially announced. Javion Cohen as well. Cam Kinchins, he's going to go. He's not like officially made his own announcement yet, but I'm not expecting Miami to retain Cam. So let's talk some portal, Brad, and let's start with portal quarterbacks, okay? Now, we did see another quarterback. I never heard anything about him being a Miami target, but Brock Vandegrift from Georgia landed at Kentucky earlier today. I know some Canes fan may say, we missed out on another one, but I never saw Vandegrift get linked to Miami for what that's worth. The guys that I see linked to Miami most, obviously Cam Ward, Will Howard, Jordan McLeod. I've seen him get linked to Miami quite a bit. Where do you think the Hurricanes might be standing when it comes to these talks and this recruitment for transfer portal quarterbacks to replace Tyler Van Dyke?
Well, as we know, Mario, every offseason since he's been the head coach at Miami, he's made it a very top priority to where whatever our biggest weaknesses, he went out in the offseason and he went right at it right away, right? You saw first year offensive line, second year defensive line. This is the year where you need a premier quarterback. You need that guy. And when you looked at the transfer portal, these quarterbacks were jumping in left and right. And this is where you got to have a plan and you got to be able to execute it very well. This isn't just a sit and wait game. And with your starting quarterback and Ja'Carri Brown currently in the bowl game, you don't know if you're going to have him either. So this brings up a lot of interesting things for Miami to use as leverage to kind of tell these guys that they're pitching to, hey, you're going to be the quarterback for the University of Miami. And I think you need a veteran guy. I don't think, there were some dimensions of Dante Moore and a couple other guys that maybe have 2 or 3 years left. But this is year 3 of Mario Cristobal. It's time to win football games, and especially the ones that matter the most, right? You're opening week 0 next year in Gainesville, where I'm at, against the University of Florida. You have to make sure you have a quarterback that is ready for that atmosphere, ready for that crowd, that has been in big-time moments like that. And Cam Ward and Will Howard are at the top of the list of mine and many others. And it seems like they're really pinpointing on those two. I would expect, hopefully, an announcement within the next 10 days. I would be very shocked if we don't have our quarterback one before early signing day, because like I mentioned, a lot of these other targets, whether it's wide receivers in recruiting or wide receivers in the portal or just big names in the portal, it's a lot more enticing when they know who the guy at quarterback is. And until you get that guy, there's a lot of question marks. So I expect the decision to be made in the next 10 days. Cam Ward, Will Howard, I'm cool with either one of them. The other name I really do like, though, is Toledo's quarterback, Daquan Finn. He had just under 7,000 passing yards, about 1,700 rushing yards, and a total of 88 touchdowns in just 3 years. He's a guy that plays around talent that isn't really the best, right? He's able to utilize what he's got. He's a smart decision maker. He can use his legs as well. I'm not necessarily saying that's your QB1, but then again, I think you still need 2 quarterbacks, whether you get 2 quarterbacks in the portal or you go with another guy in the recruiting class like a CJ Bailey and you add that alpha dog in the portal. But I think he may be one of those guys that they may just wait and see until they land that guy. But I'm going to say Cam Ward or Will Howard, man. I'm cool with either one.
I love it. And by the way, Brad mentioned Florida against Miami week 0. In case Mario Cristobal needed any more motivation, win that game for Brad Tejeda, because he lives there in Gainesville. Like, I just think about the opportunity. If Miami wins that game week 0 and you can just walk all around town wearing your Canes gear and piss everybody off up there. I want that for you, Brad. Mario needs to win this game next year.
Hey, I'm gonna be doing once we get closer to game time, a few months before, I'm gonna be partnering with one of the big Miami Hurricane companies, and we're gonna collaborate, and we're gonna be doing pretty much a Canes Fest the night before for all the Hurricane fans that'll be traveling to Gainesville.
Count me in because I'm going to the game.
Okay, yeah, we'll be renting out a 3-story club. I'm gonna have a DJ. We're gonna have some former players there. I'm gonna have Bo Bradbury painting a live picture as well, man. So we're gonna have it all for the Cane fans. We'll make sure to take care of everybody.
It's fantastic. Let's talk more transfer portal with Brad Tejeda. He does an awesome job. CanesInsight.com. Make sure to follow him on X at Tejeda Brad. But we're not done yet, man. Second episode of the day. Coffee has been flowing throughout my house. You want to keep it locked right here on this all-new episode of Locked On Canes. And I know you guys are keeping it locked to FanDuel. As the weather gets a little colder out there, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. So, guys, basically, if you bet $5 money line on the Miami Dolphins, you're probably going to win because they've been red hot lately. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, which are a lot of fun. The Tyreek Hill props have been very profitable for me. Over-unders, so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. And this time of year, more than ever, you want to get in on our Locked On Canes Insiders exclusive texting service. Click the link in the show description below. You can try it free for 14 days. And then if you want to give yourself a gift for the holiday season or give it to a loved one, $4.99 a month if you want to opt in. And we try to give you a lot of added value on there, from recruiting scoops, episode previews, breaking Miami Hurricanes news. I'm pretty active there on the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. So if you want to check it out and try it free for 14 days, click that link in the show description below. We are joined here by Brad Tejeda. All right, so Brad, Miami, we know confirmed at least one big-time portal visitor this weekend, and that's C.J. Clark, nose tackle from NC State. Leader, grad transfer, has been a productive player the last couple of years, started every game this past year, did okay going up against Matt Lee in Miami versus NC State. He generated 2 quarterback pressures going up against Miami star center. I feel pretty good about the way this one is trending, Brad. And as we've talked about, Miami really needs defensive tackles.
Yeah, CJ Clark is a name that they've, kind of honed in on since the beginning of transfer portal. And even before then, when they played NC State, it seemed like they had some good communication even after the game. But I would say, besides the obvious at quarterback, defensive line, interior offensive line, and secondary are going to be the 3 key positions to watch in the transfer portal for us Miami Hurricanes. When you bring up the defensive line, I mean, there's names that are going out left and right. And I think it's going to be very key for Miami not to just go after, the biggest names, the Walter Nolans of the world, but to really key on guys that want to be at Miami and can really get the use out of that 1 or 2 years and really fit our defense. Because as we know, Lance Guidry likes to run a lot of different stunts. CJ Clark is at the top of the list over at NC State. A few other names I would probably mention is Xavier McLeod, defensive tackle from South Carolina. This is a name that Miami was high on his list when he first came out of high school as a recruit. He was one of the top recruits in the nation. I expect Miami and him to try to lock in a visit very shortly because he's going to be a name to watch. Another one's going to be obviously Pat Payton, right? In the last 24 hours, Pat Payton has entered the transfer portal out of Miami Northwestern. He was one of the key contributors for the defensive line at Florida State, and it was a Florida State-Miami battle when he came out of high school. Unfortunately, our head coach at the time didn't quite think he was going to pan out as the guy that a lot of us fans did, and instead we took Thomas Davis instead of Pat Payton. And Thomas Davis is in the transfer portal, as we know. So Pat Payton, if you're watching this, man, I think us Cane fans would like you home. And there's a couple other names that haven't hit the transfer portal. I'm looking at that Texas A&M defensive line, Alex. Yeah, I've seen just about every name hit the portal but one.
Shamar Stewart.
There's one name that hasn't yet, and I'm waiting on it because I think I know Cane fans, they're hit or miss with that young man. But I would definitely like to see him in orange and green. And if he does indeed hit the portal, I would expect Miami to be at the top of the list with that one too. Offensive line, like I just mentioned, man, There's going to be a couple names to watch out for. You got Zeke Correll. He's a center over at Notre Dame that's hit the portal. Between him and Ethan Miner, who recently hit the portal from North Texas, those are two centers that I would watch very closely for Miami. Just because we don't know right now what's going to happen with Matt Lee. If you would have asked me about a month ago, I would have said, hey, Matt Lee is coming back. We're good, guys. Don't worry about it. Now, I'm a little worried. I think Matt Lee may hit the NFL draft, and I don't blame him. He's one of the best centers in college football. I wish him the best. If he does stay, that'd be great. But I think Miami is already starting to do their due diligence. There's also another young man by the name of Jabari Brooks, 6'3", 335. We already offered him from Samford. He played interior offensive line, whether it was guard or center. He has about 2,500 snaps between left guard and center, and he played center all of last year. He was very productive, had a PFF of around like 83. So that's a guy that I know Mirabal and Cristobal have already offered the young man. So that's another guy to watch, because between Matt Lee, Jalen Rivers, Jared Harrison Hunt, and Kiko Maegoa, those are going to be the four names to watch very closely left on this football team, whether they hit the NFL draft or stay.
Yeah, and if we were to lose that many on the O-line, especially, obviously I'd hate to lose Kiko, and I'm cautiously optimistic that Kiko is going to stay. I'm not as optimistic about Matt Lee. Rivers is another one. We haven't talked about him much as a possible exit, but he had a really, really good year as a starting left tackle, so you never know. Be a lot of bodies to replace on the O-line, but I also know Alex Mirabal really likes his depth. Like, he really thinks Matthew McCoy is going to be one of the next great ones here. And you and I know, Brad, are very high on Tommy Kinsler, because I can remember all the conversations we had about Kinsler even before he committed to Miami. So I think his time to shine is going to be soon.
Absolutely, man. We got the bodies and we got the coaching. It's all about, putting in the work and seeing it flourish on the football field. But I think it's got to start with the QB1. I think we have all seen this football season. A lot of things could go wrong and a lot of things could go right. But when you don't have a quarterback that you could depend on and just make the small execution and the small throws, it leads to a lot of big problems. So we got to land that QB1. Once we do, I think a lot of other things will fall in place. But I'm excited, man. I think this staff, they're doing their due diligence. They got a plan set. We got all the money we need in the transfer portal, whether it's for recruits in the recruiting class or offering these guys with NIL compensation. We're not hurting like Florida State and Florida right now, so that's good. I'm looking at my Christmas tree behind me, and there's no presents under there right now, Alex.
Mario took them all.
It's for a reason. Right now you don't want to have your best things under the tree until after December 20th. Once December 20th this year, that's when you need to put all the presents under the tree, because anytime before December 20th, Mario Cristobal might come through your door and take those presents.
I like it, guys. Make sure you support Brad. Follow him on X at Tejeda Brad. Make sure you follow our show at Locked On Canes. And make sure, if you're watching us on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to our channel. If you listen to the audio version, fantastic. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your pods. Brad, huge thank you. And, man, let's do this a little more often, especially these next couple of weeks, because it's going to get crazy.
It is, man. Well, let's link up next week. I should be free anytime next week. We'll do this again, man.
Awesome. Let's talk to everybody again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.